I served in the military before 1990, and for years after leaving the service, there was another VA benefit sitting there with my name on it worth more than $2,000 every single month. I wasn't denied. I wasn't disqualified. I simply never knew it existed because no one ever mentioned it, and I never thought to ask the right questions. Looking back now, that's the part that stays with me. More than $2,000 a month. Month after month. Year after year, money that legally belonged to me but remained untouched simply because I didn't know it was available. That is a better roof over my head. That is help around the house I told myself I could not afford. That is a winter I did not have to spend watching the thermostat. All of it was mine to claim, and all of it went by because of a single thing I did not know. So I am going to tell you exactly how I finally claimed it, and how you can too. But I want to be honest with you first. This is not a complaint, and it is not a sad story. After I found out what I had been missing, I did not sit and feel sorry for myself. I sat down and I learned this subject properly, the way I wish I had years earlier. I read the actual rules. I asked the people who understood them. So what I am about to give you is not regret. It is the education I paid for with my own missed years, handed to you now for free, so that you do not pay the same way I did. Let me start with what I believed, because I suspect you believe it too. For most of my life, I thought the VA was simple. You get a disability rating, or you do not. You get that monthly payment, or you do not. And whatever that number happened to be, I assumed that was the end of it. I had my Social Security. I had what I had put away. And I got on with life the way we all do, 1 month at a time. It never once crossed my mind that there might be an entirely separate VA check with its own set of rules that I could already be owed. That belief felt like plain common sense to me. It was also completely wrong, and the gap between what I believed and what was actually true is exactly what cost me all those years. So here is the first thing I learned, and it is the foundation for everything else I am going to tell you. There are actually 2 different kinds of VA money for older veterans, and most of us only ever hear about one of them. The first is disability compensation. That is the one everybody talks about. It is tied to a service-connected injury or condition, and it is based on your rating. If that is the only VA money you have ever thought about, you are in the same place I was for years. The second is called the Veterans Pension, and it is a completely different thing with a completely different door. The pension is not about a specific injury at all. It is for wartime veterans who are older or disabled and living on a limited income. It is a separate check, paid on top of whatever else you may or may not receive. And I had been walking right past that door for years, never once noticing it was there. Now here is the single word that opens that door: wartime. The VA recognizes certain wartime periods, and if you served on active duty during even one of them, you have already cleared the biggest hurdle there is. And I need you to hear this part clearly, because it is where most veterans count themselves out for no reason. You did not need to see combat. You did not need to go overseas. You did not need a Purple Heart or a single day in a war zone. You simply had to be serving during that window of time. And here is why the year 109 matters so much. The Gulf War period, as the VA counts it, begins in August of 109, which means almost every single one of us who served before 109 was serving during a recognized wartime period, whether we ever thought about it that way or not. I certainly never did. I just did my time and went home. I had no idea that the simple fact of when I served would one day be worth more than $2,000 a month to me. Now let me tell you about the mistakes I made, because I have come to believe they are the very same mistakes keeping you, or someone you love, from this money right now. My first mistake was assuming I earned too much to qualify. I knew the pension was for veterans of limited income, and in my head I figured I was probably just over whatever the line was, so there was no point in even looking. What I did not understand was how the VA actually counts your income. They do not simply look at what comes in. They subtract your out-of-pocket medical costs first. And once you reach a certain age, those costs are rarely small. When I finally added up everything I was spending on care, on prescriptions, on the help I was starting to need, my income in the eyes of the VA was far lower than the number I had been carrying around in my head. I had disqualified myself based on the wrong math entirely. Let me put that in rough numbers, because that is when it finally became real for me. Say a veteran brings in a certain amount each year from Social Security and a small pension. On paper, that might look like too much, but then say that veteran spends a good deal of that every year on medical care and medicine that no one reimburses. The VA subtracts those costs before they ever decide, so the income they actually count can end up thousands of dollars lower than the income you think you have. That difference is the difference between being told no and being handed a check. My second mistake was worse, and I suspect it is the most common one of all. I assumed my savings and my home disqualified me. I thought, I own my house, I have a little put by, surely I have too much. But that is not how it works. The VA looks at your net worth, and for this year, the limit is about $163,000. And here is the part that stopped me cold when I learned it. Your home does not count. Your vehicle does not count. Your everyday belongings do not count. The house I was sure had disqualified me was never going to be counted against me in the first place. I had talked myself out of years of benefits over things that were never on the table. And my third mistake was the simplest, and by far the most expensive. I never applied. I never even asked the question. And you cannot receive what you never claim. For year after year, I claimed nothing at all, not because I was denied, but because I did not know there was anything there to be denied in the first place. That is the quiet tragedy of this whole thing. Nobody is going to knock on your door and tell you, the letter never comes. You have to go and find it. So, let me tell you how it finally turned around for me, because the moment it changed was smaller than you would think. It was another veteran, at a coffee morning, an ordinary Tuesday. We were talking about nothing in particular when he mentioned, almost in passing, an extra check he had recently started receiving. And when he said the words aid and attendance, I realized I had never heard them together in my life. I asked him to say it again. I drove home turning those 3 words over and over in my mind. That night I did not sleep much. Not out of worry, but because for the first time I had the feeling that I had been missing something, and I could not let it go. So the next week, I did the one thing I should have done a full decade earlier. I found a veteran service officer. Now let me tell you what those people are, because I did not fully understand it myself until I sat across from one. A veteran service officer is a trained person whose entire job is to help veterans claim the benefits they have earned. They know these rules inside and out, and they do it, from beginning to end, completely free. There was never a bill, there was never a catch. I brought what he asked me to bring, my service dates, a simple picture of my income, and a list of what I was spending on my care, and then I sat down and I asked one plain question. Do I qualify for the veteran's pension? I will not forget the answer. It was yes, and there was more. Because I had reached the age where I needed a little help with the ordinary business of the day, the bathing, the dressing, the getting around safely, I also qualified for that boost my friend had mentioned, the one called aid and attendance. That is what lifts the basic pension up to a much higher level. For a single veteran, that can bring the yearly amount to around $29,000, which works out to roughly $2,400 a month. For a veteran with a spouse, it can be higher still. That was the second check. The one I had been walking past, month after month, for years. It had been sitting there the entire time with my name on it, waiting for the single moment I finally thought to ask. Now let me hand you the lessons plainly, the way I so badly wish someone had handed them to me before I lost all that time. The first lesson is that the pension is a separate check from disability compensation. They are 2 different doors. If you have only ever thought about your rating, you may be missing an entire second benefit that has nothing to do with it. Do not assume that one is the whole story. The second lesson is that wartime service is the key that opens that second door. If you served before 109, there is a very good chance you served during a recognized wartime period and simply never realized it counted. Do not rule yourself out. Combat was never the requirement. Serving during that window was. The third lesson is to stop disqualifying yourself in your own head, the way I did for years. Your home does not count against you. Your car does not count against you. And your medical costs actually lower your income in the eyes of the VA. So let them do the math. Do not do it for them from your armchair and talk yourself out of a check you may well be owed. The fourth lesson is the one that holds all the others together. Do not try to do this alone, and do not wait another day. Sit down with an accredited veteran service officer. It is free. Bring your service dates, a picture of your income and your medical costs, and simply ask the question. And there is one caution I will add, because I learned it a little late myself. In the 3 years before you apply, the VA looks at whether you gave away money or property in order to qualify. So please, talk to that officer before you move a single dollar around, so you do it the right way and not the costly way. I want to be fair about one thing, so that no one hears this and gets their hopes up unfairly. Not every veteran will qualify for the pension. It is built for those living on a limited income, and the exact amount depends entirely on your own situation. This is not a check that everyone who served before 109 simply receives. But if you are a wartime veteran of modest means, and there are a great many of us, this could be life-changing money sitting there right now, waiting the way mine was for you to notice the door. And I keep coming back to that word, notice. Because the only thing that ever stood between me and that money was noticing that it existed. I did not need to be smarter. I did not need to fight anyone. I just needed one person to tell me, and for years, no one did. So let me be that one person for you today, and then let me ask you to be that person for someone else. Think of one veteran you know who served before 109, who might be walking past the very same door I walked past for so long. A friend, a neighbor, the quiet fellow at your own coffee morning. Send this to them, because the only thing standing between them and a second check may be the exact same thing that stood between me and mine all those years. Simply knowing that it is there. One honest note before I go. I am not a lawyer, and I do not speak for the VA. This is general information drawn from my own experience, not advice about your personal situation, and the rules and the amounts can change from 1 year to the next. For your own case, sit down with an accredited veteran service officer or a veteran service organization. Most of them will help you at no cost, and they will know your situation far better than any video ever could. Thank you for spending these few minutes with me. Go and ask the question the way I finally did, and I will see you in the next one.